800 years ago, English builders ran out of straight trees. So they did something that should not have worked. They took a curved, twisted oak, split it down the middle, stood the two halves up like a wishbone, and built an entire house around that bent piece of wood. No steel, no engineered lumber, just a tree that grew crooked, turned into the strongest frame in medieval Europe. And in 2026, a small group of builders are pulling this 800-year-old technique out of the history books and putting it under 200 square foot tiny homes. Stick around, because the reason this design almost disappeared and the reason it is coming back is not what you think. And near the end of this video, I'm going to show you the one number that makes or breaks whether a Cruck Frame tiny home makes any sense at all. Before we get into it, if you're new here, this channel breaks down alternative housing with real numbers, real builder names, and real permitting headaches. No sponsorships, no affiliate links, just the truth about what these builds actually cost. Hit subscribe so you do not miss the next one, and let's get into it. A Cruck Frame is not a style. It is a structural system. Picture two matching curved timbers cut from a single tree that grew with a natural bend, or from two trees selected to mirror each other. Each pair is called a blade. The blades run from the ground or from a low stone plinth all the way up to the roof ridge in one continuous sweep. There is no separate wall frame and roof frame like you see in a standard stick-built house. The Cruck blade is the wall and the roof structure at the same time. Builders would set these blade pairs at intervals along the length of the building, connect them with a horizontal tie beam partway up, and then hang purlins and rafters between the pairs to complete the shell. The result is a building with zero interior load-bearing walls, because the curved blades on the outside are doing all the structural work. That detail is exactly why this 800-year-old system is having a moment in tiny house design right now. An open, uninterrupted interior is the single hardest thing to achieve in 200 square feet, and Cruck Framing gives it to you structurally for free. This was not an aesthetic choice. It was a supply chain problem. Timber framers in medieval England, particularly from the 1200s through the 1500s, needed long straight oak for a competing use, shipbuilding for the Royal Navy and the merchant fleet. Straight, clear timber was reserved and taxed for that purpose. What was left over for house builders was the curved, forked, and irregular stock that shipwrights had no use for. So carpenters adapted. They learned to read a standing tree, find the natural curve in the trunk or the split at the base, and turn what looked like waste wood into the primary structural member of a house. The technique concentrated heavily in the West Midlands of England, in counties like Herefordshire, Shropshire, and Worcestershire, where oak forests were dense and the shipbuilding demand for straight timber was intense. Full Cruck construction, where the blade runs unbroken from ground to ridge, is the oldest and rarest form. Later builders developed base Crucks and upper Crucks, hybrid versions that used a curved timber for only part of the frame height, which used less premium curved stock and were faster to build. By the 17th century, brick and sawn-dimensional lumber made the technique largely obsolete, and most surviving examples today are protected historic structures, farmhouses and barns scattered through rural England and Wales. Here is the part that surprises people. The reason Cruck Framing struggled in medieval times, curved timber is unpredictable and hard to source and match pairs, is the exact same reason a small number of modern timber framers are drawn to it now. It is not a scalable, catalog-ready system. Every true Cruck Frame is a one-of-one, built around whatever curved trees a builder can actually find. In an era where most tiny homes are dimensional lumber boxes rolled off a production line, a hand-selected curved oak frame is the opposite of mass production, and that scarcity is exactly what a segment of buyers in 2026 are paying for. There's also a genuine structural argument for tiny homes specifically, because the Cruck blade combines wall and roof support into a single member. A tiny home built this way can achieve a full cathedral ceiling and a completely open floor plan without a center ridge beam or interior posts eating into your 200 to 400 square feet. For a format where every square foot is expensive real estate, removing interior structure is not a luxury. It is a floor plan win. Full Cruck tiny homes are still rare enough that you are not ordering one from a catalog. This lives in the custom timber frame world. Builders like Vermont-based Timber Homes have built modern cruck-framed residences using naturally curved hardwood, cherry and oak, hand-selected for the job, with joinery cut on site or in a small shop rather than mass-produced. In Massachusetts, timber framer David Babson of Ravenswood Builders has built a regional reputation specifically around cruck and curved timber work. In the UK, woodsman and builder ban law popularized a roundwood cruck approach that keeps the curved timber in the round rather than sawing it flat, which is both more historically accurate and, according to law, structurally stronger. None of these builders are selling a tiny home kit off a shelf. You are commissioning a structural timber package, and the 2026 pricing reflects that. Timber frame package only, $60 to $120 per square foot. Weathertight enclosure, frame plus SIPs and insulation, $150 to $300 per square foot. Turnkey custom tiny home market average, $250 to $450 per square foot. Compare that to the broader 2026 tiny home market, where prefab units run $150 to $250 per square foot and custom stick-built tiny homes run $250 to $450 per square foot. A cruck frame tiny home does not undercut those numbers. In most cases, it sits at or above the top of that range once the curved timber premium is added in, because you're paying for a builder's time to source and hand-fit a regular stock, not a nail gun running standard 2x6 studs down a straight wall. This is the part most videos skip, and it is the part that actually determines whether your project happens on schedule or sits waiting for a year. A true cruck frame needs matched pairs of naturally curved trees, and finding two trees, or two halves of one tree, with a mirrored bend of the right radius is not something you order from a lumberyard. Builders describe walking forests for weeks, sometimes months, looking for the specific curve they need. In regions like the American Pacific Northwest, where Douglas fir dominates and grows straight, that search gets significantly harder, and some builders there have started substituting engineered curved glulam beams to replicate the shape without waiting on nature to provide it. This substitution is not a niche workaround, it is now the norm. By some builder estimates, as many as 9 in 10 modern cruck-style, tiny home builds use engineered curved glulam rather than natural hand-sourced timber, because matched natural bends of the right radius are nearly impossible to source at any commercial scale. That splits the cruck tiny home market into two very different products in 2026. A true hand-hewn cruck frame built from found timber is the historically authentic version, and it is slow, expensive, and dependent on what the land gives you. A glulam or engineered curve version delivers the same cathedral silhouette and open interior on a predictable schedule and a more predictable budget, but purists will tell you it is not really a cruck frame at all, just a cruck-shaped roofline. If a builder ever quotes you a fast turnaround on a full cruck frame, ask what the curve is actually made of before you sign anything. A curved structural timber does not behave like a straight 2x6 in a code official's eyes, and that changes your permitting path. Standard prescriptive framing tables in the residential code assume dimensional lumber and standard spans. A cruck blade is a custom structural element, so most jurisdictions are going to require a stamped engineering analysis from a licensed structural engineer showing the frame can carry snow, wind, and live loads for your specific site, regardless of how many centuries the technique has been proven in England. If your cruck tiny home sits on a foundation and stays under the size threshold your state has adopted, IRC Appendix AQ, the tiny house appendix now adopted in some form by a growing list of states, can simplify parts of the code around ceiling height, loft egress, and stair geometry. It does not simplify structural engineering for a non-standard frame. That review is a separate cost, typically $2,000 to $4,000 depending on your region and the complexity of the joinery, and it needs to happen before a single curved timber gets cut, not after. Skip it, and you risk a framing inspection that stops your build cold. If your cruck home is built on a trailer as a THOW, a tiny home on wheels, RVIA or NOAA certification adds another layer of review, and the irregular geometry of a cruck frame can complicate GVWR and weight distribution calculations in a way a standard rectangular THOW never has to deal with. This is not a build to attempt without an engineer and a code official who has actually seen a Cruck frame before, because a lot of them have not. This channel does not do hype, so let's be straight about the trade-offs. A Cruck frame tiny home costs more than almost any other tiny home structural system per square foot. Timeline is unpredictable because it depends on sourcing the right curved timber. Engineering and permitting review adds real time and real money before construction even starts. And resale is a genuine question mark, because appraisers and lenders are set up to value standard construction, not one-hand joined curved timber frames. If you are building this to flip or finance conventionally, talk to a lender first, because timber frame construction loans already require specialized underwriting, and a Cruck frame narrows your lender pool further. There's also a maintenance reality. Exposed timber, which is the entire visual point of a Cruck frame, needs to be protected from moisture at the base where the blade meets the foundation. Historically, the single most common failure point in surviving medieval Cruck buildings. Modern builders solve this with a raised stone or concrete plinth and a moisture barrier at that connection, but it is a detail that cannot be skipped. Now here is the reveal, the number that actually decides whether this design makes sense for you. Because the Cruck blades carry the entire roof and wall load along the exterior, a 280 to 350 square foot Cruck tiny home does not need interior load-bearing posts, a center ridge beam, or loft support walls. That means a Cruck frame opens up 100% of the home's vertical volume, floor to ridge, in a way almost no other tiny home structural system can match at that size. This is not extra floor area. Your footprint is still your footprint. It is uninterrupted airspace and unbroken sight lines from one end of the house to the other. And that is the exact quality that makes a small home feel large. On a 200 square foot footprint, that is the difference between a home that feels like a hallway with a bed in it and one that feels like a great room. That is the actual trade you are making. You are paying a real premium, roughly comparable to or above the top end of custom tiny home pricing in 2026 for a fundamentally different structural outcome, more usable open volume, a visual character no production tiny home can replicate, and a building method with an 800-year track record for standing up to wind and snow load when it is engineered correctly. Whether that premium is worth it depends entirely on whether open cathedral space or budget efficiency matters more to you. And honestly, for most tiny home buyers focused purely on cost per square foot, it will not be the right structural choice. For someone who wants their 200 square feet to feel nothing like a box, it might be the only structural choice that actually delivers that. If you want to see the full breakdown of base Cruck versus full Cruck versus upper Cruck construction and which one actually makes sense for a tiny home budget, I am covering that in an upcoming video, so subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss it. Drop a comment and let me know, would you take on the weight and the cost of a hand-sourced curved timber frame, or would you rather have the look with an engineered glulam curve and a predictable schedule? I read every comment. See you in the next one.